"You're not our problem anymore, old man. Pack your things." That's what the director told the 85-year-old veteran as nurses looked away. No appeal, no mercy. Just a few plastic bags tossed at his feet and a door slammed shut. They thought the story would end there. They were wrong because 3 days later a black SUV pulled up, a general in full dress stepped out, and he wasn't there to shake hands. If you believe some debts of honor never expire, no matter how many decades pass, comment "never forgotten" below. Walter Hayes had survived 3 wars, but it was peacetime that broke his heart at a retired Army Sergeant Major moved through Maple Creek Nursing Home, with the same quiet discipline that had carried him through Vietnam's jungles and desert storms, burning sands. His room, though small, was kept with military precision, bed corners tight enough to bounce a quarter medals displayed in a modest wooden case his granddaughter had made before cancer took her with no family left. Walter had grown accustomed to solitude. His wife Margaret had passed a decade earlier. Their only son Robert died in Afghanistan in 2010. His only family now was the faded photographs kept on his nightstand, faces frozen in happier times that seemed to belong to someone else's life. Most days, Walter sat by the window watching birds visit the feeder he'd installed. He rarely complained even when his arthritis flared or when the kitchen served mystery meat. The staff appreciated his stoicism and unfailing politeness. Always please and thank you even on his worst days. But Maple Creek had changed hands 3 months ago. Cornerstone Healthcare Holdings had purchased the facility, bringing a new director, Marcus Phillips, a man whose MBA and spreadsheets had replaced whatever compassion might have once existed. Budget reviews were conducted, staffing was optimized, and patient profitability assessments revealed who was worth keeping and who wasn't. Walter's cocktail of medications for his heart condition, coupled with his fixed VA benefits that paid less than private insurance, had placed him firmly in the liability column of Phillips' ledger. Mr. Hayes Phillips said one Tuesday morning, appearing unannounced in Walter's doorway, manila folder in hand. "We need to discuss your continued residency." Walter turned from his window, birds momentarily forgotten. "Something wrong with my paperwork, sir. Your care requirements exceed our new patient profile guidelines," Phillips stated, not bothering to sit down. "You'll need to make alternative arrangements within 48 hours. Alternative arrangements? Walter's voice remained steady, though his hands tightened on his armrests. "This has been my home for 3 years when the VA hospital has beds," Phillips continued, dropping eviction papers on Walter's lap. "Our administrator will help you contact them. You have until Thursday morning." One of the nurses, Sophia, hovered in the hallway. Eyes down, cast several other staff members found urgent reasons to be elsewhere. "Is there an appeal process?" Walter asked. "Military training kicking in, assess, identify options, form a plan." "You're not our problem anymore, old man," Phillips replied, checking his watch. "Pack your things." Within hours, Walter's life had been reduced to 3 plastic bags and a small suitcase no one offered to help him pack. No one called him a taxi. He was escorted to the front entrance by a security guard who couldn't meet his eyes. The door closed behind him with finality, leaving him alone on the sidewalk. As afternoon shadows stretched across Maple Creek's manicured lawn, Walter stood motionless, the weight of his situation settling on shoulders that had once carried wounded comrades through firefights. His meager possessions sat at his feet in bags that crinkled in the autumn breeze. The American flag patch sewn onto his jacket sleeve, faded but meticulously maintained, caught the sunlight as he moved toward the bus stop across the street. The bench was cold, metal, uncomfortable against his thin frame. Walter placed his bags beside him and withdrew his old flip phone technology. His granddaughter had insisted he learn to use his contact list was short. Most names belonged to people who were no longer alive to answer. He tried the VA hospital first. No beds available for at least 2 weeks. The apologetic voice informed him, "We can add you to the emergency waiting list." 2 calls to affordable senior apartments yielded similar results. Waiting list measured in months, not days. Walter closed the phone and placed it back in his pocket for the first time since Margaret died. He felt truly alone. Not even the jungle had been this isolating there. At least he had had his unit men who would have given their lives for him as readily as he would have for them across the street. Sofia Martinez watched from her car. The nurse's aide had ended her shift, but couldn't bring herself to drive away what she witnessed felt wrong on a level that transcended employment concerns. Walter Hayes had never been anything but kind to every staff member. He kept candy in his room for the janitor's children. He listened patiently to the cafeteria workers' stories about her college classes. And now he sat alone, an old soldier with nowhere to march. Sofia raised her phone and framed a photo through her windshield, capturing Walter's profile against the setting sun, his posture still remarkably straight. Despite everything the American flag patch clearly visible on his sleeve, his expression remained dignified, revealing nothing of his circumstances to casual passers-by. She hesitated only briefly before posting it to her social media account. This is how we treat heroes now. 85-year-old Vietnam and Desert Storm veteran Walter Hayes, just evicted from Maple Creek Nursing Home because his care was too expensive. No family, nowhere to go, sitting at a bus stop with everything he owns in 3 bags at veterans treated like trash out at Maple Creek. Shame. Sofia added Walter's full name and rank before hitting post, then started her car. She couldn't offer him a place to stay. Her studio apartment barely fit her own family, but as she drove past the bus stop, she pressed a piece of paper with her phone number into his hand. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Hayes," she whispered. "I'll try to help somehow." By nightfall, Walter had secured a bed at a downtown homeless shelter. They're known for accepting veterans. The staff treated him with respect, but the environment, noisy, crowded with the underlying current of desperation, was a far cry from the room he'd called home for years. Meanwhile, his image began spreading across the internet. Veterans groups shared Sofia's post. With outrage, local news stations picked up the story, their evening broadcast, featuring the photo accompanied by scathing commentary about corporate healthcare and abandoned heroes. By morning, the image had reached a private Facebook group consisting of veterans who had served in Walter's former unit across different decades. Among them was General Michael Lawson, whose illustrious military career had begun as a fresh-faced lieutenant in Vietnam, a career that would have ended in an ambush outside Quang Tri in 1969, had it not been for then Staff Sergeant Walter Hayes, who carried the wounded officer through enemy territory to an extraction point, stopping twice to administer field medicine that kept him alive. General Lawson stared at the image, recognizing immediately the man who had saved his life over 50 years ago. Without hesitation, he picked up his phone and made 3 calls in rapid succession. The first was to the Department of Veterans Affairs, where his 4-star status ensured he spoke directly to the secretary. The second was to the governor's office, calling in a personal favor from a former subordinate. The third was to his aide. "Clear my schedule for tomorrow. We're making a trip because some debts can never be repaid with medals or citations alone. Some debts demand personal action, regardless of rank or time passed. Heroes don't ask for recognition, but real loyalty never forgets to give it comment. Stand for them if you believe honor doesn't expire with age." Dawn broke over the homeless shelter with harsh fluorescent lighting. Walter had slept little, his body unaccustomed to the thin mattress and constant sounds from neighboring beds. Still, he rose at 0500 hours old habits ingrained too deeply to break and made his bunk with hospital corners. A volunteer approached Mr. Hayes. "There's someone here to see you." Walter followed him to the common area, where a young Army captain in full rest uniform stood waiting, cap tucked precisely under his arm. "Sergeant Major Hayes," the captain said, rendering a perfect salute, "Captain Miller, aide to General Michael Lawson." "The general requests your company for breakfast." Sir Walter returned the salute, automatically muscle memory transcending decades. General Lawson, he repeated the name immediately, triggering memories of a rain-soaked jungle and a wounded lieutenant he thought unlikely to survive the night. "Yes, sir, transport is waiting outside." outside a black Suburban with government plates idled by the curb. As Walter approached, the rear door opened, and General Michael Lawson himself stepped out, 4 stars gleaming on his uniform chest, adorned with rows of ribbons telling the story of distinguished service. Walt. The general said, formality momentarily abandoned, as he extended his hand. "It's been too long," Lieutenant Lawson Walter replied automatically, using the rank from their shared past. "You've added a few stars since I saw you last over breakfast." General Lawson outlined what had transpired overnight, the viral photo. The public outrage, the calls he'd made, and the responses he'd received. The VA secretary has authorized emergency intervention. Lawson explained the governor has ordered an immediate investigation into Maple Creek's practices, but I wanted to offer you something more personal. Walter listened quietly, hands wrapped around his coffee mug. "My family maintains a private residence for veterans in Hartford." Lawson continued, "Not a facility, a home staffed by former service members. There's a room waiting for you if you will accept it." Walter's expression remained carefully neutral. "That's very generous, sir." "It's not generosity, Walt, it's a debt." Lawson's voice softened. "You carried me for 6 miles with a bullet in your own leg. You kept me alive when evac was delayed. Everything I've accomplished since my career, my family, the lives I've touched exists because you didn't leave me behind for the first time since his eviction." Walter's composure wavered. "Just did what needed doing, and now I'm doing what needs doing," Lawson replied firmly. "But first, there's one stop we need to make at precisely 10. Mirror known, 3 black SUVs pulled into Maple Creek Nursing Home, circular driveway, staff and residents pressed against windows as General Lawson accompanied by Captain Miller. 2 military police officers and Walter himself entered through the front doors. The receptionist's eyes widened. "Sir, you can't. Where is Marcus Phillips?" Lawson asked, his tone leaving no room for anything but a direct answer in his corner office. Director Phillips was in a meeting with 2 board members, hastily summoned to discuss the viral photo. He looked up as the door opened, irritation turning to uncertainty at the sight of a 4-star general. "Marcus Phillips?" Lawson asked, though it wasn't really a question. "Yes, what is the meaning of this intrusion? This is private property, not entirely private as it turns out." Lawson nodded to Captain Miller, who handed Phillips a thick folder. "This facility receives federal Medicare funding, which places it under certain regulatory frameworks." Phillips opened the folder, face paling as he scanned the contents. This is irregular. You can't possibly, while federal injunction." Lawson interrupted calmly. "Immediate suspension of this facility is operating license, pending investigation," and this, he placed another document on the desk. "Is your administrative reassignment effective immediately? You can't just barge in here." Phillips sputtered, looking to the board members for support. They remained conspicuously silent. Lawson stepped closer, his voice low but carrying easily in the silent room. "You threw out a soldier who once carried wounded men through mortar fire. Today, we carry you out instead." Within minutes, 2 federal agents arrived to escort Phillips from the building. Residents watched from doorways and windows as the director was led to an unmarked car, his personal items hastily packed in a cardboard box, an irony not lost on anyone who had witnessed Walter's eviction. Days earlier, Walter observed the scene without comment, standing straight back beside the general. His very presence a rebuke more powerful than any words could have been. The veterans' residence in Hartford stood in stark contrast to Maple Creek's institutional atmosphere set on wooded land. The converted Victorian mansion maintained historical charm while incorporating modern accessibility features. Each bedroom had been thoughtfully designed for dignity. No hospital-style beds or clinical lighting, just well-crafted furniture, private bathrooms and windows overlooking manicured grounds. Walter's room awaited his arrival with evident care, a freshly made bed with a handmade quilt, a bookshelf stocked with military history and classic westerns, and above the bed a properly folded American flag in a triangular display case positioned next to a wooden plaque reserved for those who stood when others ran. "The staff here are all veterans or spouses of veterans," General Lawson explained as Walter set down his possessions. Medical care is provided on site, but without the institutional fields, you'll have privacy when you want it, company when you need it. Walter moved to the window, looking out at oak trees beginning to show their fall colors. Who funds this place a foundation my wife and I established years ago, Lawson replied, call it an investment in properly repaying debts. In the days that followed, Walter settled into his new surroundings with the adaptability that had served him well throughout his military career. He discovered the residence's workshop, where his skilled hands soon found purpose creating wooden toys for a local children's hospital. He joined other residents for meals where conversation flowed easily among men and women who shared the unspoken understanding that comes from service true to his word. General Lawson visited every Sunday afternoon. He arrived without fanfare, dressed in civilian clothes rather than uniform. Bringing coffee and occasionally fresh donuts from a bakery Walter had mentioned liking, they would sit in the garden when weather permitted trading stories and comfortable silences with equal ease. Meanwhile, the investigation into Maple Creek continued. Within 6 months. The facility was permanently shut down, following discoveries of multiple violations beyond Walter's improper eviction. The remaining residents were relocated to better facilities, with many staff finding new positions at those same locations. Sophia Martinez, whose photo had started it all, received a personal letter of thanks from General Lawson, along with a scholarship to complete her nursing degree. She now works at the VA hospital, where a photograph of Walter Hayes in his dress uniform sits on her desk. Each Memorial Day, the veterans' residence holds a simple ceremony. A wreath is placed on Walter's favorite garden bench, not in memoriam, but in celebration of a promise kept. The attached card reads simply, "We never leave our own behind." It's a promise Walter himself kept in the jungles of Vietnam, a promise General Lawson returned half a century later, a promise that reminds us all that true loyalty stands until the last salute. Subscribe to Ironheart Stories. If you believe true service doesn't end when the war does, and true loyalty stands until the last salute,